Hey guys, what's going on? It's Clever Techie, and in this video, I'd like to introduce you to PHP programming. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Starting off with the variable names, every variable in PHP must start with a $sign followed by the variable name. The variable name must start with a letter or an underscore. It can't start with a number. We assign a value to the variable by using an equal operator. And in PHP, an expression is anything that expresses a value. The value would be an expression of itself. And once the variable has been assigned a value, the variable also becomes an expression. Now, the statement in PHP ends with a semicolon. And you can think of statements as any kind of action in programming. So in this case, the action is simply assigning a value to the variable. And we complete the statement in PHP with a semicolon, which is how all the statements end in PHP. And also, just to get you guys a little bit more familiar with the programming lingo, when the variable has been assigned a value, we can say that the variable has been defined and initialized, and it's ready to use. Okay, let's go ahead and start programming. I'm going to pull up the IDE here. I'm going to be using NetBeans with a custom dark effect theme that I've created. Okay, so we start coding PHP by an opening PHP tag, and we end it with a closing tag, just like that. Now, just to show you an example of comments, a single line comment in PHP starts off with 2 forward slashes. And the comments in PHP are just a way for us programmers to understand our code a little bit better. And an alternative way is to use a pound for a single line comment. Now, the multi-line comments start off with a /*, and they're ended with a */, and you can type whatever text or code that you want in between these, and it's going to be ignored by the PHP interpreter, just like that. Now let me go ahead and define some variable names. I'm going to go ahead and define some variables here. And they're all going to have different data types. And data types are just basically value types. Okay, so these are 4 different data types. This is a string data type. This is an integer data type. This is a float data type. And finally, Boolean data type. And just to clarify a little bit more, there's 3 categories of data types: scalar, composite, and special in PHP. Scalar you can think of as a single unit of data, so those are the ones that I just defined. So the first one here is a string, which is a text, and is going to be enclosed in single or double quotes. Next one is an integer, which is a whole number, float, which is a fractional number, and finally Boolean, which is a 0 or 1. And the Booleans can also be expressed as true for 1 and false for 0. Now, under the composite, you can think of composite as a collection of data. So an obvious example is an array, which can hold multiple values. The second one is object, which refers to the instance of the class, which I'll cover at the end of the video. And finally, we have special. Under special, we have a null, which is like a variable that has been assigned constant null, has not been assigned any value, or has been unset. And finally, there is a resource, which holds special kinds of values like database connections. Okay, so those are the data types supported by PHP. Now let's go ahead and output some of these variable values to the screen. I'm going to use a keyword called echo, which outputs the values to the screen. And I'm just going to say the game name was released in release year, and it now cost now at amazon.com. I'm gonna create another $sign here, and at the end I'm gonna use a BR HTML tag, which is a tag used to start another line in a browser. Okay, now I'm gonna go to the output, and as you can see, all the variable values are being printed out to the screen just like we wanted to. Now if I copy this whole line here and I enclose it in single quotes, the single quotes in PHP are also known as literal quotes. I'm going to go back to the output, and now it's literally printing out variable names instead of values, which is why single quotes are also known as literal quotes. So I'm just going to comment this line out here. So basically, using double quotes allows you to use the variables inside those double quotes. Okay, let me show you what constants are. So there's two ways to define a constant in PHP. One way is to use a built-in function called define, and the functions in PHP, whenever you call a function, you use the round brackets. In this case, the values are going to be constant name enclosed in the quotes, separated by a comma is the constant value. So that's one way to define a constant, and the second way, which I actually prefer, is to use the construct or the keyword const followed by the constant name, and then just like the variable we use the equal operator and then the value. And also by convention, all constant names are uppercase and never prepend a constant with a $sign, unlike the variable. Another really important thing to note about the constant is that just like the name says, constants never change once they have been defined. Okay, so I'm gonna actually create a constant out of this BR tag because I'm gonna be using it a lot throughout this video, and I'm gonna use the const keyword method, and I'm gonna name the constant BR and just place this BR tag inside the constant. Now you can just use this constant inside the quote, so I'm gonna have to use something called concatenate. And concatenate basically just adds a value to the string of text, just like that. And we use a dot to join the string of text together. So dot and then the constant name, and if I go here and refresh the page, nothing changes. And if I go to view source, you can see that the BR tag is still being printed out, so everything is working just like we expected it to. Now, let me just show you guys arithmetic operators real quick. Now, all of these are mostly self-explanatory, and if you use plus or minus or multiply or division or modulus or even exponentiation, which was introduced in PHP 5.6, all of these will work just like you expect them to. The negation is just going to give you a negative variable or negative number. Now, the one that I would just want to explain real quick is identity. And here it says conversion of variable to integer or float as appropriate. Let me just explain what that means in a little more detail. So if I had a variable and it had a number as a string here, let's create a float number. If I use a built-in function called var_dump, which is a function we can use to find out what the data types are, function to find out what the data types are in PHP, and I'm going to pass this num variable inside this function, go back to the output, refresh the page. As you can see, PHP is telling us that it's a string data type with 6 characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So if I put the plus sign operator in front of it, it's going to convert it to float. So it's just a useful way to convert string numbers to integers or floats, and it can be useful in some situations. Okay, so that's what it is, just so you guys know. Now let's go ahead and just another example. So if this function was, for example, just 100, if the value was just 100, it would convert to integer. So that's how that works. Okay. Alright, now let's go ahead and move on to arrays. Now, there's two types of arrays in PHP, numeric and associative. The numeric array is created, we create the arrays with the keyword array, or rather array is the proper way to say it. And then we use the round brackets and we list the values of the array with comma separate. We separate the values inside the array with a comma. Now the word numeric refers to not the values but to the array keys. And just to clarify here, this is what that array in the example would look like. So whenever we create a numeric array like that, the keys are automatically created. And the key count starts with 0. So you can think of keys as like an identifier for all the values. So the value 4 would be identified with a key 0. The value 3 would be identified by key 1. Value 5 would be identified with key 2, etc. And when this array is created like this, all the keys, all the numeric keys are automatically created for us. So we don't have to worry about that. Okay, so that's numeric array. The associative array, we actually specify what the key name is, and we enclose it in either single or double quotes, and we use this rocket operator to assign whatever value of that named key is going to be. So this is an example of what the associative array would look like. You would have a named key, and that key would identify a value. In this case, StarCraft key would identify a value 1998. The Witcher key would identify variable year, etc. Okay, so those are their numeric and associative arrays. Now let me show you guys some examples. Let's just go ahead and create an array called game genres using the array keyword, and I'm just gonna put a bunch of string values inside this array. String data types, rather. And let's see here. Action, puzzle, strategy, MMO, RPG, and FPS. So those are just the different kinds of game genres. And then what I'm going to do here, and I'm going to use the echo keyword to try to print out this array to the screen. So echo and then the name of our variable array. And here I'm going to get this notice, array to string conversion. That's because we cannot directly access the array in PHP. In order to access the array keys, we would use square brackets. So for example, in this case, the key here is of the RPG, for example, keys. The key of the RPG is 0, right? 0 is RPG, adventure is 1, action is 2, etc., right? So here's what we do. We just use square brackets and we put the key inside of those square brackets, and that accesses the value of that key. So if we go back, as you can see, the RPG has been printed out, which is the value of key 0, just like we have in our array. If I put 1 here, the next key is going to be the next value is going to be accessed, which is going to be adventure. So now you can clearly see how all these keys have been automatically generated for us, and we can access all the values in the array using those keys. Now let me just show you an example of a multidimensional array. So a multidimensional array is just an array which has an array within itself. So if I created another array out of these 3 values here, now what this array would look like is this. So first of all, this is the key 0 for RPG, but the next key, which is 1, is going to have a data type array, and we can't access that directly. So if I tried something like this again, you can see that we're trying to again access the array directly, and we're getting this notice because we can't do that. So what we do here is we append the square brackets with more square brackets, and then we access whatever the keys are inside the second array. So in this case, let's access adventure, which is 0, and then that would access adventure. So just like shown in this table here, first we're accessing key 1, but that's a data type array, so we can't access that directly. This data type array has its own keys, so we access its key with more square brackets, put the key value inside of those square brackets, and that's how we access its values. So those are multidimensional arrays, and if I wanted to access more keys, I would simply go 1 and 2, and I'm just going to prepend this with our br constant here using concatenate, and this should print out all of our values. Yep, adventure, action, and puzzle. And just to also gonna print br here, so we get all the values printed out like this. Okay, so as you can see, we're accessing all of this this second array's keys, 0, 1, and 2, and adventure, action, and puzzle has been printed out. So that's how we access arrays keys, and that's how we access multidimensional arrays. Now let's create associative arrays. Okay, so I'm just gonna create an array called, I'm gonna create a variable array called years, same using the array keyword. And in this array, I'm gonna go ahead and create game names along with their release years, and I'm gonna use the rocket to specify what the values of those keys are. The Witcher Rocket was released in 2009, comma, the Mass Effect 3, and here I'm just going to use the constant which we have created earlier, which holds the value of 2013, and finally Diablo, I'm going to go to the next line here, Rocket 1996. Okay, so just like in the example earlier, we create our key name, use the rocket, and specify the value of that key. So if I'm gonna print out this array, and actually we can print out the whole array using a function called print_r. So this is exactly what I'm gonna do here, and I'm also gonna use HTML tags called pre to format the array a little bit nicer. Go back to the output and get this error because something forgot to do something here on line 57. Okay, so comma here. Oh, okay, so I put the rocket inside the quotes. Okay, there you go. Refresh. Okay, so wait. Now the constant is freaking out. Oh, okay, so I forgot to, I'm actually gonna create a constant out of this here. Just forgot to do this, and I'm gonna use the other technique. This is what I forgot to show you guys. Release year, and I'm just gonna put the value 2013. So this is just another way to define the constant, as you remember from the constant example. So now we have the constant release year, and it holds a value of 2013. So now everything should work. Undefined variable release year. This is what I was gonna do. Okay, so I'm just gonna print this release year constant in the middle of this quote. So in order to print the constant here in this string, I used concatenation on the left side, on the right side, and I also closed the quote on each side as well. So that's how you would print out the constant in the middle of the string. Okay, let's go back to the print R years, and now we're not getting any errors finally, and you can see that the keys and values have been printed out, and in this case, instead of numeric keys, we have named keys, and they're all associated with their respective values. So this is our associative array. Now the arrays can also hold different data types. So for example, in this case, you can see that the array's keys can hold variables and constants and numbers, but they can also hold strings and other data types. So just to mention that real quick. Okay, let's keep going here, and we've covered the numeric arrays, associative arrays, and multidimensional arrays. Now, if I was gonna print out this game genres array here, see what happens. Okay, I'm also gonna use these pre-R tags so that it's formatted on each individual line. Okay, you can see how this multidimensional array has been printed out with their numeric keys, and for the numeric key 1, the data type is array, just like was shown in our table here. 1 is array, and it has its own keys, and here has been printed out just like shown in the chart. Okay, so that's it for the arrays. Now let's move on to functions. So here I'm actually going to create the function, but before I do, let me show you the function syntax. In PHP, we define a function, and construct is just another word for a keyword. So we use the keyword function followed by the function name, and then the round brackets are used, and inside the round brackets we have our arguments separated by commas. Now you can think of arguments just like the variables. And after the round brackets we have curly brackets, and inside the curly brackets we have a group of statements, which is basically function's code, which is going to be performed when the function is called. Now when the function is called, we pass the parameters, which act just like the variables, and these variables will hold values, so they're called expressions, hence the name expression1 and expression2. And then these parameters get passed into function's arguments. So the first parameter is going to get passed to the first argument, and the second parameter is going to get passed to the second argument. And then inside this function, the arguments are going to be used to do whatever we want with those arguments. Okay, so I'm going to create a function, just to spell the function right here, using the function keyword, and I'm going to call it pre_r, and use the curly and round brackets. I'm going to pass one parameter or argument here called array, and this function, what it's going to do is just going to print out the pre-tags automatically for us, so we don't have to do it every time. And as you can see, we're using the we're also using the print_r built-in function to print out the actual array. But what it does is additionally it echoes out the pre-tags automatically for us. Okay, so let's utilize this function. Let's go ahead and delete these pre_r tags. We don't need them anymore, and just utilize our pre_r function, which will also clean up our code a little bit more. And go back to the output, and nothing should change, just like expected. Everything remains the same, but now we won't have to print those pre-tags. We'll just use the pre_r function, and now we have successfully defined a user-defined function. And just to show you guys another example of the function, I'm just going to create a function called add, which is just going to have two arguments, x and y, and it's going to add them two together and return them. So I'm just going to use the plus operator, and the return keyword basically returns the value of the function to us. So if we were going to do something like num equals 100, no, add 100 to 100, the num is now equals, just to give you a comment, the num is now 200, echo num, br constant. Now the number that we should be printing out is 200. Yep. Okay, so it just returns the value which is calculated from the function, and we can do this because the return value is going to be whatever is returned by the function. In this case, 100 and 100 plus 100 equals 200, and then we print out the value to the screen. Okay, so that's the difference between printing out function values as opposed to returning them. All right, let's see what's next. Next is conditional expressions. Now, the conditional expression is just any expression which returns true or false. That's as simple as that. So 10 is greater than 5 is true. That's a conditional expression which evaluates to true. 10 is less than 5. That is false. So this is a conditional expression which evaluates to false. Now, the truth expression, comparison expression, and Boolean expression all mean the same thing as a conditional expression. All right, guys, we're now ready to move on to if statements. Okay, so here's how the if statement works. So we use the keyword if, and then inside the statement we have a conditional expression, or we can have multiple conditional expressions like shown here. And is operator, it's called a is it a comparison? No, it's let me see, what is it? Array operators, assignment, comparison. Okay, it's called the logical operator. So and true if both A and B are true. So we have two conditional expressions here. Age is less than 21 and age is greater than 18. So if both of these are true, then our statement is going to be executed. So if the age is 19 or 20, which is between 21 and 18, then this statement is going to be executed. Next, we have an else if another condition is true. So if age is over 21, then the next statement will be executed, and else if age is less than or equal to 18, then this statement will be executed. So you can think of it as if expression evaluates to true, our first statement is executed, etc. If this one is true, this one is executed. If both of these are false, this else is executed. So let me just show you a quick example here. For example, if 18 is less than 21, echo, it's true. So this will evaluate to true and should print text it's true. Yes, it does. Okay, so next one is if 18 is less than 21, same thing. Gonna use same example. Do that, but else if it's not, so if it's false, do something else. Echo it's false. And statement with a semicolon. Echo it's true. So for example, if if I put 18 is greater than 21 here, then it's going to print out it's false because we have a false condition. It's false. Okay, so that's how that works. And finally, I'm just going to copy and paste this code here. We have else if. So if this expression is true, then it's going to execute this statement. If the next expression is true, it's going to execute this statement, and if that expression is true, it's going to execute this statement. And if none of those are true, it's going to execute this one. So you can have a nested if and else if conditions, and you can have as many as you want. In this case, release year is equal to 2013. So is the year greater than 2010? Yes, it is. So the game was released after the year 2010 is going to be printed out. The game was released after the 2010. I mean, after 2010. Yep. Okay, so that's how that works. And finally, I wanted to show you guys another conditional called switch. And switch is like it's like a short version of a bunch of else if statements. So if the expression, we evaluate the expression, and if it equals 0, then execute this statement, and then we use the keyword break to exit from the switch statement, and if it's 1, execute this one, and if it's 2, execute that one, so etc. And it's important to use break at the end of each case statement, because otherwise it will just keep executing and printing out all these statements. So let's just go ahead and give you an example of a switch. So for example, I'm gonna define a variable named best game, and I'm gonna have a string value of StarCraft, and then I'm gonna just paste this code here. So in the case the game is StarCraft, the best strategy game of all time, you rock Blizzard is gonna be printed out. Then we break to exit the switch. In case it's The Witcher, this code is going to be executed, etc. So in our example, since the best game is StarCraft, case StarCraft, this statement is going to be executed. The best strategy game of all time, you rock Blizzard. Okay, so those are conditionals, and now let's move on to loops. The first loop I want to show you guys is the for loop. So we got 3 expressions here. In the first expression, we define our counter. In the next expression, we have a conditional expression, which is going to define when the loop is going to be ended. So until this condition is true, the loop is going to keep going. And finally, we have a modifier of the counter in expression 3, which we either increase or decrease the counter or modify it in any other way. So the loop will continue executing statements within the curly brackets as long as the conditional expression, which is expression 2, evaluates to true. When it evaluates to false, the loop will end. And the iteration in the loop is something that repeats the code. So every iteration, the code is repeated. The expression 1 is only executed during the first iteration. So when the loop is run the first time, this expression 1 is read, but during the next iteration, this expression 1 is ignored. And the easiest way to understand any loop is if expression is true, then continue looping, and if its expression 2 is false, then exit the loop. Alright, now let me show you an example. Just clear out this code here a little bit. Okay, so for example, for I equals 0, I is less than or equal to 10. So just a classic example, I++, and then we're going to echo out AI and use the BR constant. So this is going to print out the I 10 times. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just like we wanted to. And that's the basic syntax for the for loop. Now let's go ahead and loop through our multi-dimensional array that we have created earlier. Okay, so I'm gonna say for key equals 0, key less than count, and then our game genres array key plus plus. So basically what I'm doing is I'm using the function count, which counts how many how many elements are inside the array. In this case, it's going to be how many elements? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's gonna the count game genres is gonna return 5, and it's gonna keep looping. Just gonna comment this count equals 5, and then I'm gonna echo out. Gonna go ahead and echo out game genres key, and then use the br constant, and then let's see what happens. Notice array to string conversion. So what happened is we tried to access that key 1 that we talked about earlier, and it didn't print it out because, well, it's trying to access the array data type. But it did print out strategy, MMORPG, and FPS, which means, let's see if we go back here, strategy, MMORPG, and FPS. Now, why did it skip RPG? Wonder why I skipped RPG, because key 0 let me just cut this out and bring it back here. Okay, so RPG should have been printed out, but it didn't. Strategy, FPS, okay. I'm just gonna debug this then. Oh, Oh, okay, so it messed up. Okay. Alright, well, let's go ahead and actually, in order to print out this multidimensional array, we need to check if key 1 is a data type array, and there's a function to do that. So we're gonna go ahead and create an if statement inside this loop and say if is array game genres key, then we want to create another loop, and this one is gonna go key 2 equals 0, key 2 less than count game genres, and it's gonna count the key and increase the key by 1, and then echo out that game genres array here using that multi square bracket syntax that we talked about earlier. Okay, so that's gonna be our if statement. Else is just gonna print out the regular array, just like that, and this should work. Yep, now it's printing out all the multidimensional array values. Now guys, this is a little bit advanced here, but just go through it and look at this chart a few more times and you'll get it. So when we get to the key 1, we're just checking if it's an array, just like specified by function is underscore array, and here we have a key, so we know that we're accessing key 1 here. And now when it gets to 1, the is array is true, so we create another loop to loop through all the values of our second array, and our second array has 3 values, so the count is going to be 3 instead of 5. So the count is 3, and here count is 5. So because the second array only has 3 keys, okay? Alright, so and then we use the double, we set the second key to 0, and we also loop through it by using the second set of square brackets. So just play around with it a little bit more and look at the chart, and eventually you understand what's happening. Okay, let's keep going here. Finally, I want to show you the for each loop. And for each loop, we use it to loop through the associative array. So this array here, because we can't use the for loop since for loop only loops through numeric keys. Okay, so I'm gonna loop through years as game year. This is our for each loop. Let me pull up syntax chart. Okay, for each, expression 1, expression 2, and expression 3. So expression 2 is going to have the key of the array, and then this variable key is going to get assigned to the actual key of the array, and then the expression 3, which is a value variable, is going to be assigned a value. So let me print out an example. So echo game was released in year, and then the br constant. Okay, so the game is going to get assigned the actual value of the key, and year is going to be value. So let's see here. Okay, so the key, no, it's the wrong one. Anyway, let's see what happens here. Okay, StarCraft was released in 1998. So StarCraft is a key, 1998 is value. The Witcher was released in 2009. The Witcher is the key, 2009 is a value. The Mass Effect is a key. The Mass Effect 3 is the key, 2013 is a value. And then finally Diablo is the key, and 1996 is the value. So you can see how the game has been assigned the key, and the year has been assigned a value. So that's how you loop through an associative array. And then finally, there's two other loops in PHP called while and do while, and they work very similar to the for loop. Basically, what they say is while the expression is true, keep looping, and then the do while. Basically, the difference between these two is do while executes the statement during the first iteration for sure, while the while loop first iteration is not guaranteed. So let me just show you a quick example of that, not to get too confusing. Just gonna paste these loops here. So the first one, I is less than 10, keep printing I plus plus, and start the I with a 0. And then the second one, C, basically the same thing, print out the C. Okay, so we got two loops printing out doing the same thing. And just to show you the difference, if I did this here, so I changed the operator to greater than, this would be immediately false here, so it wouldn't print anything. But in a do while, it would print it out because the condition is evaluated at the end of the iteration. So watch. So 0 has been printed out by the do while loop. Because first we do, so we print out the statement, which is 0, C equals 0, and then at the end we do the comparison iteration. So that's the difference between these two. I hope that makes sense. Finally, I wanted to show you guys what classes and objects are all about in PHP. So here is a very basic syntax of the object. And the difference between class and an object, you can think of a class as an abstract concept like, for example, an animal or a car. And an object is something that lives in the real world, like a car type is a red Ferrari, for example. And when we create the object, we use the new keyword, which creates the object instance of the class. And when that happens, the object inherits all the variables and functions of that class. Now, the variables in the class are called properties, and the functions are called methods. And we use the this object operator, we'll just call it a Dart, to access all the variables and functions inside the class. Okay, so objects and class are a little bit advanced, and I think if I show you an example, it'll make a lot more sense. So here we go. Let's define a class called car, and we define every class using the class keyword, and then we're just gonna create some properties, which are the variables inside the class, and we use var keyword to do that. So we're gonna have var make, var type, var color, var max speed. So those are all our properties or variables. And then I'm also going to define a constant br, because we can't use the original one because this is inside the class, which is a different scope. And then we're going to define the functions as well inside this class, and we're going to output some messages. Now, just to make this video a little shorter, I'm just going to copy and paste all this code here. And as you can see, all our variables, and then there's a bunch of functions. And what these functions do is they basically output text message. For example, accelerate, this color, this make, this type is now accelerating. So it's going to have the values of the object, place them here. In place of this color, it's going to be the actual color of the car. Instead of this make, it's going to be the actual make of the car. And instead of this type, it's going to be the actual type of the car. And the way, so this is a car class, car, and it's like an abstract concept, right? Now, in order to actually create our car, here's what we do. For example, let's define a variable called Acura and assign and create the object using the new keyword, new car. Car is our class. So now the object has been created. Object is created. And now we can do something like this. We can access those properties using the Dart and assign all kinds of values to our properties. Color equals black. And then I'm just gonna paste all these other things here. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm creating the copy. I'm creating the instance of the car class, and I'm creating an object out of it. So Acura is now an object. Acura is now an object data type. And then I'm assigning all the variables which are present inside the class, and I'm creating the values out of those variables. And then I'm also using the same Dart symbol. I'm calling all the functions which are also part of the class. And if we go to the output, the black Acura RSX is now accelerating, is honking loudly, has turned on the right signal. So all these functions are being used, and the values are being replaced by the actual values that we have created in the class. And finally, it's using the information function, which prints out all the information about the car to the screen. So make Acura, type RSX, color black, max speed 140. Okay, hopefully this is not too confusing. I will cover classes and objects in another video, but I just wanted to give you guys a feel for what the classes and objects are all about. And just think of them as, think of the classes as a collection of variables and functions, and objects as basically a copy of that class, or more correctly, an instance of that class, which can utilize all of its variables and functions, and we can provide the values for whatever properties that class has, and we can invoke, or we can call all the functions which that class has as well once we have our object. Okay, so you can play around with this a little bit more, and I think you'll understand how it works. And this is a very basic class in PHP. Okay, let me see what else I got here. Okay guys, this concludes the introduction video to PHP. Now, before you go, there's a lot of great graphics, like a bunch of these cheat sheets that I've created, which we have, which you've seen in this video. And I've also created a bunch of study guides for you with all kinds of arithmetic operators, array operators, assignment operators, comparison operators, etc. I've also created these tables where we covered arrays so you can understand these a little bit more. And I've also have a dark effect theme which I've used in the NetBeans IDE here. Here's what it looks like. So that's pretty cool, right? So you can go ahead and download all of these in the link. One sec. Okay, so these are all the graphics and study guides and cheat sheets and themes that you can download by clicking on this link here. And you will be asked for your email address. And don't worry, I won't be sending you any spam. I'll only be sending you great videos like this with all the awesome graphics and downloads in the future so that you never have to subscribe again. So go ahead and download all of that. And lastly, please like and share this video with your friends. And also make sure to watch the next video in which I'll be covering PHP variables in more detail. Till next time, Clever Techie out.